November 30th, 1874. In a bleak-looking room, an ancestor to the Duke of Marlborough aristocracy was born 2 months premature. At this time in history, the Marlborough aristocracy was not held in high esteem in public service and was regarded as having no principles and morals. The new addition to the Marlborough aristocracy would not be held down by its ancestors, but instead go out and create a legacy of his own. This baby boy, who was in a hurry to come into this world, we now refer to as Sir Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill's life was never dull for 3 reasons. The first reason his life was never dull was because he was self-educated. The second reason Winston Churchill's life was never dull is because he was an avid writer. And the third reason Winston Churchill's life was never dull is because he was a wartime leader. The first reason Winston Churchill's life was never dull is because he was self-educated. Winston Churchill was not a very good scholar in his younger days. He had to apply to the Royal Military College 3 times before he was accepted. He also had to apply for a cavalry position instead of infantry because of grade requirements were lower. Roy Jenkins, an autobiographer for Mr. Churchill, wrote, Churchill, decided that he was seriously undereducated and ought to do something about it. To correct this deficiency, Mr. Churchill applied to his mother, Lady Randolph, to send him books on history, philosophy, and economics. Mr. Churchill was once quoted as saying, my literary tastes are growing day by day. In addition to these readings, he once again applied to his mother, Lady Randolph, to send him the 27 volumes of Annual Review, where he would, starting from the year of his birth, 1874, would read over every major parliamentary debate and discuss and cast his vote on how he would vote for each issue. The second reason, besides being self-educated, that Mr. Churchill's life was never dull was because he was an avid writer. To supplement his overspending of £400 allowance from his mother, Mr. Churchill took up war corresponding. War corresponding brought him into the attention of the public and earned him sufficient income. Mr. Churchill corresponded for many London newspapers and wrote his own books about the campaigns. Randall S. Churchill, Mr. Churchill's son, exclaims, Mr. Churchill's reputation as a war correspondent was already made by his books. War corresponding for Mr. Churchill opened many doors to become a renowned writer. In 1953, Winston Churchill was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Throughout his career, Winston Churchill published biographies, volumes of memoirs, and many newspaper articles. Mr. Churchill was such a renowned writer, he had his own theme song around Great Britain. This theme song went something like this. You've heard of Winston Churchill, that is all I need to say. He is the latest and the greatest correspondent of the day. Besides being self-educated, the third reason Winston Churchill's life was never dull was because he was a wartime leader. Mr. Churchill was one of the first ones to recognize the threat of Hitler before the Second World War, but his deeds went unnoticed. In May of 1940, he was appointed Prime Minister before the Germans invaded France. Winston Churchill said, "We shall go on to the end." These 7 words did all that words could do. They explained what had to be done, why they had to be done, and they inspired the ones that had to do it. Adam Gopnik writer of The New Yorker and author of The Finest Hours, wrote, "Throughout the war, as Hitler retreated into his bunkers, and Stalin stormed, and even Roosevelt concentrated power more and more in his single hand, Churchill accepted votes of confidence, endured Thatcher's parliamentary criticisms, and meekly left office after triumphing the most impossible of victories." Mr. Churchill's calm demeanor, never give up demeanor, helped his country obtain success in the greatest hours of defeat. Never, never, never give up. This famous quote by Winston Churchill demonstrated how this self-educated government leader led his life. Winston Churchill's life was never dull for 3 reasons. First, Winston Churchill was self-educated. Secondly, Winston Churchill was an avid writer. And thirdly, Winston Churchill's life was never dull because he was a government leader.